Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me today in this podcast on very important subject: how your thinking ultimately determines the condition of your health. I think when you hear some of these, it's going to surprise you. I can't say I have perfect thinking either, but most people they're coming to me for treatment for their health issue, and they want to know, oh, can you treat me? Can you cure me? Do you have the herbs for me? And know what I'm thinking is, do you have the right attitude or not? That's what's important. I've been treating people for all types of conditions, and that's the most important factor that I can see is your thinking. Not only is your thinking critical to recover from a condition or to do a natural treatment, like I provide, where we change the diet, change your bad habits, and have to take herbal medicine sometimes morning, afternoon, and evening. Not only do you have to have good, positive thinking to recover and to cure, but if you don't, that's probably why you got the health problem in the first place. The same, let's just call them negative thoughts, negative thinking habits, are what probably determined or made it so you got the health problem in the beginning. And then when it comes time to become treated, the same negative thinking stops you from recovering. And we probably could have a bigger list, but I've got 7 types of negative thinking. When I was a young man in the 20s, in the early 80s, I think the first Guruji that I found, Ayurveda doctor, I was walking behind him, and I was always talking to him because he was always walking. And I said, "Is there anything you cannot treat, Guruji?" I was young, and I believed this man could treat everything. And he had thousands of patients, and been in practice for more than 40, 50 years. He was an old man. And his answer was, "I can treat everything but negative thinking." And that stopped me in my tracks. I thought he was going to talk about maybe some 4th stage cancer or something. But that was his answer, and I never forgot it. And now, 35 years later or something, I'm thinking the same thing as him. I could treat anything but negative thinking because I'm not a counselor and I don't have the time to really, change people's thinking. They usually come to the treatment with the thinking. And we can see this. I can see this in my practice over the decades, that the people with the right thinking, the right attitude, were the ones that recovered. I have a testimonial on my website under kidney conditions of a woman from Mexico who apparently prayed to God for a cure. Told her kids in the United States to find, I don't know what the words were, a natural healer or herbalist. I'm not sure. But anyway, they just found me, and they decided to just contact me, and they brought her to me. And then this woman just walked in the door and hugged me and said, "You're an answer to my prayer." And at that point, I was, pretty, convinced this woman had a good attitude. Let's just say that. And this woman had high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol. And worse, and that wasn't even what she was concerned about, or brought her to me because she'd been taking those medications for decades, was that her kidneys were failing, and the doctors told her she had to go on dialysis soon. So then they brought her to me. Doesn't speak English. She's got her son translating, her daughter-in-law. There's a few of them in the office. And this woman, I had to tell it in English. They had to take it, or she had to write it down in Spanish. Then we loaded her up with herbs, and she was staying in the United States, but later on she was actually in Mexico reordering the herbs, and they were sending them to her. So this went on for, close to a year before I got the testimonial, which is on my website, where the family member says, my mother had high blood pressure, diabetes, and cholesterol. And over the last year of treatment, she lost 100 pounds, got off of all of her medication, and her kidney function improved. And the doctors, months earlier, had already said there looked like there was no need for dialysis. So this was a case where it was a tough case, complex. It took a whole year to treat her, a lot of herbs, because she was taking herbs for blood pressure. She was taking herbs for blood sugar. She was taking kidney herbs. She was taking herbs all day and night, and she had to cook a very specific diet, because for every new health problem you have just basically means more herbs and a more restrictive diet. And so since she had multiple health conditions, and particularly kidney failure, the diet is very restrictive, and you really have to cook everything at home. So, but she did it. And I would like to hear from, I haven't heard from for a few years, the family, but it was an extraordinary case of positive thinking. And in her case was even faith, and faith in her religion, in her belief in God, her belief in, the answers to her prayers, and then all of the other positive attitudes that she had, like discipline, learning fast, being clear, being extremely positive the entire time, and open-minded to changes, learning fast, believing in me, believing in the herbs. And that's what got her through. No doubt about it. And then on the other hand, I can get very wealthy people who, maybe were thinking they were eating good, or healthy, and then they had a type of cancer, or liver cancer, or colon cancer, and they come to me, and they end up not following the guidelines, not believing in what I tell them, remaining confused, somewhat negative, sometimes even offended by something I said, and not having the discipline to cook their food or stop the diet. And then so these people, they don't succeed in the treatment, even when the condition is not that complex. If the person doesn't have this positive thinking, then the prognosis is much lower. Now, I notice if you look at all my hundreds of testimonials, you can see many people that said, I was skeptical. I didn't know they were so skeptical, but apparently when I got the final testimonial, many people do say, I was skeptical. I was not that confident. But once I treated them for the first condition, maybe like their joint pain, their blood sugar, or they went to the doctor and they saw their liver enzymes get better, then they became a believer. So I believe many of my patients that I've had for a long time, more than 10, 15 years, their attitude towards at least natural health care and my treatments and Ayurveda has become more positive, because they've already seen the results. But we're talking about a person here who doesn't know me, and so this is where, or doesn't know Ayurveda and not familiar with taking herbs, or doesn't believe yet in taking herbal remedies. These type of people can have this type of negative thinking, and ultimately prevent them from recovering. So let me just go over what I've shortlisted 7 types of negative thinking that I've seen, it prevents a person from recovering from their own health issue. And like I said, probably was the cause of the health issue in the first place. Number 1, which we've said, is just basically negative thinking, believing it's not going to work, believing they're not going to get better, believing they're going to have to take the med forever, believing there is no cure for a condition that I've already cured dozens and dozens of times, and even have testimonials to prove it, even have video testimonials to prove it. But some people, they just still have this stuck in this negative thinking that it's uncurable. Now, somebody told them that, or they read that, or something, or they even, sometimes people are even more pessimistic and believe they will die and there's no hope. So that's really hard to treat a person like that. And like my first teacher said in the early 80s, It's the one condition he cannot treat. Another type, so you want to be positive. You got to be positive in life. I mean, in general, you have to. I think I'm not counselor here. I'm just an herbalist, but no matter what you do in life, you better be positive. I mean, you have to be aware that things could not go as planned. I mean, it never goes as planned. I mean, all of our plans don't go as planned, and these treatments don't always go as planned. But you have to remain positive because that's kind of essential for the treatment. And I think it's physically, mentally, emotionally. I mean, when you're positive, you got a better attitude. Somebody like me, the practitioner, is more motivated to help you when you're positive. Maybe we don't return your calls so fast if you're negative. I don't know it. I think it affects both your relationship with me and like according to my own teacher, it may even reflect your own ability to benefit from the herbs, because your own negative thinking can overcome even the effects of the herbs itself. And then, of course, there's the energetic level of this negative thinking being self-destructive to your own cells and your own body. And there's been a lot of research on that even glasses of water that are in a room with people chanting and praying, you drink it, it's got a certain vibration to it, and they can measure that vibration. And then they get a cup of water and put it in a room with some negative music or something. Then that vibration or energy of this negative thinking, negative music in this case, is in the water and then affects the person. So there's been research on that, how water and food all holds the vibration of the person who's preparing the food and the energy around it. So this would relate to the people around you should be positive. Your music should be positive, and, to help you remain positive. I can't emphasize that enough. So the next type of, let's just say, unhealthy thinking that could prevent you from recovering from your health condition and even send you into having more health problems is being confused thinking. Let's call it confused thinking, where people are, thinking, well, I don't, after you talk to them for an hour and a half and give them detailed instructions and tell them to write it down, take notes, and you're sending them, a summary of what to do, and you've spent an hour and a half, 2 hours with them, very detailed. I'm a very detailed, meticulous person, and I make sure people take notes. Then at the end, they say, well, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, we're out of time. I mean, I just spent 2 hours here, and now you're telling me you don't know what to do. So, and then other people will say things, well, I need to research this. Okay. Or the research says, I read, okay, maybe they read something online. Who wrote it? Who knows? People are listening to Instagram for healthcare. People are reading articles written by people they don't even know who they are. And if you go Google the person's name, you find out they're just an English major. They're taking health advice from medical doctors who, have an MD after their name that never were in practice. Or you're taking health advice, nutritional advice from an MD who never studied nutrition. Or you're taking health advice from a former comedian. Or you're taking health advice from, a talk show host who's selling you supplements. I mean, you're taking advice or listening to unqualified people who have never treated the condition that you have, and then you become confused. You can't cook a meal or a dish if you're listening to 3 cooks. I mean, you got to pick the best cook out of the bunch, preferably the one that owns a couple restaurants and is famous for his and maybe wrote a cookbook. At least he's qualified. Don't listen to, we don't go to our car mechanic and ask them, how to get along, with our spouse. We don't go to the counselor and ask them how to fix our car. Why we listening to comedians and talk show hosts and social media influencers how to treat our health. I mean, even weightlifters. Okay, he knows how to put on weight. He knows how to build muscle, but a lot of these lifters are having too much protein and end up with kidney failure, and it's well known. So why are we listening to them? I mean, there's no nutritional training. There's no Ayurvedic training. There's no Chinese herbalist training. If you have to listen to the right person, you got to pick somebody and put your faith in them. I mean, if you can find somebody, more experienced than me, okay, great. I've had people say, I'm seeing this Chinese doctor in downtown Los Angeles. Like, oh, really? I'm familiar with some Chinese herbalists in downtown LA. Is he down like in a basement in Chinatown? They go, yeah. I go, oh, how old is this guy? And he's old, big gray beard. I go, more gray than me? Oh, yeah, full gray beard. How much herbs did he give me? Oh, he gave me a big bag of herbs. He gave me capsules. He's talked to me an hour. He told me don't eat this. I said, okay, this guy's good. You should just follow him. He may be better than me. He's older than me. I know there's some good Chinese herbalists down in the basement of the mall in Chinatown and downtown LA, because I went down there and I took some Chinese herbs from a guy down there. And, if he gave you a lot of herbs, like something after meals, something in the morning, something at night, generally the good herbalist is going to give you a lot of herbs. He's going to find out every health problem you have, and he's going to give you some herbs for it. So it's going to look a little complex if you have a lot of health issues, because if you have 7 health issues, you're going to get 7 different types of treatments in most cases. And you're going to have for Chinese herbalists, you're going to have a big bag of tea. You're going to have to boil and drink it every day, and some capsules and other things. So, and then there's my teacher in India. I've had cases where I told the person, hey, you should just go to India. And I hooked him up with my teacher, and they flew to India. And they saw my teacher in India, and I think they need to follow him instead of me. And when they came back, I referred to him in the treatment and let him take the lead, because he's more senior than me. You got to pick the right person. You can't just keep listening to everything you hear online, and then you're going to become confused. And this is like messing you up. And then you don't have faith and confidence in what I did, or what I advised you. And of course, I'm not a social media influencer. I'm just a professional herbalist, been treating people for 27 years and studying herbs almost my entire life, 40 years. So that's my expertise. I'm not going to tell you how to fix your car and get along with your wife. It's just not my expertise. Okay, so next is not believing. Now, I'll say that my gender, the male gender, who we know has only using half their brain, the left side, linear thinking, they like to have proof for everything. They're kind of simple black and white people. They want, if there's no research, I mean, you could get women like that too, but generally it's a man problem, and they want to see the science. And of course, if you look at history and you look at discoveries, basically science was the last category of people to figure it out. Scientists just usually prove what other people already knew, but nobody could prove it. So that's called empirical knowledge. And a lot of Ayurveda is still unproven, but it works. And we don't really know why this herb works. Sometimes we don't know why, sometimes until you're very advanced in doing these treatments in Ayurveda, you don't know why you're telling the client to eat this or not eat that. But because Ayurveda is not a system, you have to understand it all. You need to follow it. And this is, of course, a mistake a lot of Ayurveda practitioners make. If they don't understand it, they don't do it. So in other words, they're not believing in their own system of Ayurveda. I have to believe in Ayurveda and have faith in Ayurveda. But the patient, of course, needs to believe that they're going to get better. That the herbs are going to work. And as long as they keep taking them, things are going to get better. Now, of course, once I usually treat them for one condition, even a simple thing like stop their nighttime urination or get them to sleep or something to give them some black and white proof, then their belief definitely improves. And I can see that with my old clients. Sometimes the treatment doesn't give them the best results right off the bat. but they still believe in me. They still believe in the herbs. They still believe in Ayurveda because I already treated them for 3 or 4 other conditions. So belief is very important. And what confuses people is this left brain, narrow-minded thinking of there's no science to prove it. That's generally the big obstacle. And this is why we see 85% of the patients are women, because the men, well, they just need more black and white proof, something to convince them, which usually turns out to be their wife getting better, their wife getting off the medications, and then they believe it. But that's black and white to them because the wife was, more unhealthy than them, taking more meds than them. Now the wife is improved and is now healthier than they are. So that becomes the black and white proof for the linear left brain male to now start to believe that I could help them or herbs could help them. So not believing is a big barrier. Next, not learning. There's many signs of this, of not learning with my own patients. And I'm sure many of my patients are listening thinking, oh my God, that's me. I'm that guy. And yeah, I have to admit, I'm thinking of my own patients. And you're probably in this category somewhere, particularly if you're an old patient, you gave up. Now you're listening to my webinar. Now you're realizing why you didn't get better. That's, I'm sorry. But, I say a lot of things my clients don't want to hear every single day. I even have to tell people in advance, I'm going to say things now that you don't want to hear, that you're not going to like to hear. I go, but, that's my job to advise you. My job isn't to please you or get you to like me. My job is to treat you and cure you. And sometimes I have to wake you up to get you away from your old belief system. So not learning, we can see this when people start saying things like, well, I'm going to do what works for me. Well, we just did an hour appointment and now they're going to pick and choose out of the treatment. So they're going to do part of the treatment is what generally happens. So at that point, if they drop too much of the treatment or they refuse to, change the diet, then I have to say, well, I'm not sure the whole treatment will work anymore. So this is a big problem too. I can give many examples of this where people just basically, they just kind of didn't get it. They didn't get the concept that, when I was talking about, say their skin is dry, their stools are dry, their circulation's poor. So I'm telling them, don't have dry foods, don't have dry nuts, don't have dry crackers. But they go, but I'm still going to eat nuts because I read nuts are good. So it's like they didn't learn the concept that I was explaining to them, that dry foods are aggravating their digestive system, drying out their system. And these are factors, and they have to avoid dry foods. Or again, like raw vegetables. I say, people know in your case, you shouldn't, I don't want to say maybe, you shouldn't I try to be precise. You shouldn't have raw vegetables because your digestion's weak, you get gas and bloating, and you should have soft cooked foods like, baby foods. It's easy for you to digest. But they're like, no, I like my salads. So it's like they didn't really get the concept. The concept wasn't that, okay, salads may have more vegetables than, sweet potato and carrot soup. But from my understanding, you don't have the digestive capacity to eat the salads. Or you could be aggravating your irritable bowel, your ulcerative colitis, and creating problems, or even constipating you. So I'd rather you have soft, mushy, warm, oily foods, but to make sure you're not having this difficulty in digestion, constipation, and irritable bowel, for example. But they're like, no, I like my salad. So it's kind of, from my perspective, they didn't learn. They didn't get it. They didn't get the point. But I made my point. The next thinking that stops a patient from recovering is not being open-minded. That's a big one. That's probably more of a male problem, more of a left brain type of problem. It's kind of very similar to, you know, not believing, but it's not being open minded. So we can see people will basically die sometimes before they try anything outside of their belief system. And I've seen it dozens of times where, I'm dealing with a wife or a friend or a family member, and they're trying to, get to one of their family members or husband to, do an appointment. But this person, nope, they don't believe in herbs. And ultimately, they can even die and never even contacted me, even though I may have testimonials on my website, or even could get people who have maybe recovered from that condition, that maybe that cancer or leukemia, for example, to contact them and say, hey, I had this condition and I recovered. So I can sometimes back my case up that I could treat you, or at least I don't want to say I can treat you, but I've had other successful cases. But you're going to have a positive thinking here. But many people, when they're stuck in their thinking, they're not open-minded, then they don't even try. We can see this all over the place. We can see vegans have this problem where they're like, you're telling them you're dry, your skin is thin, you need to have more oil and more fat, but you're having liver problems. You can't have too much fried foods or oily foods. You need to have more oily food. You need to have ghee, more ghee. Oh no, I'm vegan. So then now we have an obstacle because, okay, sometimes I can adjust it and say, well, okay, try to just have a lot of avocado oil, or some herbs are meant to be taken, for example, with ghee or in milk. And ask the oh, no, I don't have milk. And I go, well, what happens when you have milk? I don't like milk. I don't want milk. No, that's my question is, if you drink whole milk, do you get diarrhea? Do you have any type of serious problem or reaction? No, I just don't want to have milk. So here we have this, and I'm following Ayurveda. So I'm following a system. That's not my opinion. I may not be drinking milk. I may be, that's not the point. I'm not going by what I believe in. I'm going by a system that's worked, and I'm trying to treat you based on the treatment that has worked for me before. And the more you move away from that treatment, the probability that you don't recover increases. So because you're changing the treatment, and this is the same problem Ayurveda practitioners have. I've seen Ayurveda practitioners who advertise that say they're vegan or even vegetarian practitioners. Well, there's no such thing in Ayurveda. Ayurveda uses meat. Ayurveda, for somebody who's thin, a woman who's maybe having heavy menstrual bleeding, they'll recommend meat soup. Ayurveda is not a vegetarian system. It's a healthcare system. They use what's needed to get the job done. And food is not seen in terms of vitamins and minerals like the West. And that's one reason Westerners get very confused with Ayurvedic diets, because their brains are still stuck in the vitamin mineral mentality. And that's kind of part of the thinking problem there too. They're just thinking, well, I'm not getting my vitamins. Well, if vitamins aren't your key goal here, when you're having, say, ulcerative colitis and you're having blood out of your rectum, we're just trying to give you a diet so it cannot aggravate your colon and increase the bleeding while I treat you. Is like nutrition can sometimes be thrown out the door sometimes with Ayurveda, because we're trying to treat you and you can live for a short period of time with some nutritional deficiencies. But so this is kind of not open-minded to changing. And we can have people on the other extreme too. They're like, well, I'm doing the carnivore diet. It's the only diet. This is the way, humans lived. Okay, great. Carnivore diet. I can tell you all the health problems with the carnivore diet too. I mean, you get too much meat and then you get gallbladder problems, fatty liver problems. Then later in life, you can start to get tumors, cysts, fibroids with all the extra protein. And I get weightlifters and carnivore diet people coming in even in their 30s, who already start to have early signs of kidney failure. And that will make a carnivore stop eating all that animal protein real fast when the doctor tells him, you're going to be going to dialysis. You better go on a low protein diet. But what's he been doing for the past 5 years? Just eating meat. They will switch at that point, but they're waiting too long. And sometimes when I do the appointment, they want to take the herbs but not change the diet. So, if I don't have the person following the complete plan here, then I'm not sure it's going to work. Sometimes it still does. But every time you change an Ayurvedic diet or an Ayurvedic treatment, which includes the diet, and you start changing it and altering it, whether you're a practitioner or the patient, then you're not following Ayurveda. And this is a proven systems. I learned this from my teachers and Ayurveda, and it's based on Ayurvedic principles. It's not my own views. And sometimes some of these treatments, when I first started doing them, I didn't even understand why they're working. But I did them, they worked, and then over time, I understood why. That's another, I could think of more mental blocks here, and that is believing you have to understand everything. You don't have to understand Ayurveda. You don't even have to understand the diet. You don't have to understand and look up every single herb. I had somebody who had cancer, and then they asked me what herbs I take. I said, all the herbs are on the label of your products, and the custom formula I gave you, the herbs are listed on the invoice. So you can just go total them up. You have the packages. So she got back to me and she said, wow, I saw that some of what I thought were herbs were formulas. And some of these formulas had 20, 30 herbs in them. I go, that's right. I'm putting formulas in formulas. This is advanced herbalism. And she realized I treated her using over 120 herbs. Now, once she started looking them up, she realized you can't even begin to understand these. So you can't, you have to have, I would have to say some faith. You have to have faith. You have to have a positive attitude. That's what it all sums up, one more thing you need to have that stops a lot of my patients, and forgive me if you're in this category. I think it's a category that stops a lot of my patients. And I do tell them, probably a little bit less direct than I'm telling you now, and that is lack of discipline. That's people who have no discipline can't stop themselves from eating the cookies, can't stop themselves from eating the ice cream, can't stop themselves from going to McDonald's. Well, they're the ones that are going to have the health problems because they can't stop themselves from doing things that everybody knows is not healthy. Of course, it could be more serious addictions besides just sugar and junk food. You could be, this type of person easily can have addictive nature on cigarettes, drugs, alcohol, and not have the discipline to stop themselves from, doing things that everybody, maybe even their own family or is telling, and friends are telling them don't do. They're not, and they believe that it's not healthy to be doing it, but they're still doing it. If you're still doing something that is not healthy, then that's a discipline problem. So and then you come to me, and I tell you to change the diet, tell you to change all these bad habits and give you herbs. If you don't have the discipline to change your diet, change your shopping, change your habits, and take the herbs, then how are you ever going to get better? I mean, I could have treated 100 people for that condition, but if you don't follow it because you don't have the discipline, we have a big problem. And I would say I would lose as much as 10% of all my patients due to lack of self-discipline. And they say, I can't do it. I can't take the herbs. I don't like the taste. I can't do it. That's really a discipline problem because the taste is, it doesn't kill you. It's not a razor blade. It just tastes bad. And once you toss it down, you can chase it with some fruit juice. And I have children who slam down the herbs. And when I was in practice and my son was being homeschooled in the corner of my office, sometimes I would ask him to come forward and demonstrate to the client when he was only 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. demonstrate to the client how to take the herbs. And I would mix up some colon herbs and a little water, hand it to my son. He'd go in the kitchen, get some fruit juice, and he'd have the fruit juice in one hand. He'd have the terrible tasting herbs in the other hand, and he would shoot them down, and he would like to show the client the face. He'd do this kind of like kitty face, and then he'd toss down his fruit juice, and then he'd smile. And after he did that to a grown man who was complaining he couldn't take the herbs, that did it. The man said, okay, I can do it. Because it's all discipline. When you say you can't take the herbs, it's discipline. When you say you don't like the taste, that's a discipline problem. Now, of course, when people's health condition gets more serious, they get more self-discipline. I mean, once the doctor says that you can't, you're going to have cancer, and, you have diabetic, and your blood sugar's through the roof, and we're going to have to chop your foot off if you don't stop drinking the soda pop, amputate your foot. Well, that usually when it gets to the 11th hour, the discipline starts to show up more. Unfortunately, in the early stages where these treatments are easy to treat, the people have less self-discipline because there's less motivation to change because they're not going to die. But once they think they're going to die, then you see the discipline kick in. Unfortunately, this is obviously waiting longer. It's like the car. You keep telling a person, change the oil, change the oil, change the oil on the car. They don't do it. And then, their car, it kind of like heats up on the side of the road. It's the smoke's coming out of it. They think the whole engine's fried. That's like going to the ER, basically. They go back to the mechanic, and the mechanic says, wow, you were lucky you didn't destroy your whole engine. I'm just going to change some of these hoses, and you'll be fine. But, you better put in coolant, or you better take better care of it. And then after that, the person takes better care of their car. We see this a lot, particularly with my gender. I'm fine. Heart attack, stroke, in the ER. Okay, I'll stop drinking. So, there's some discipline problem here. So I think I've made my point. And yeah, discipline can run very deep. And these issues do run very deep in people. And I do understand that. I'm not a counselor. It's not my profession. I'm just a herbalist. I made a doctor, and I do try to be motivational with people. I think that's very important, to be motivational and positive. I'm very positive. People say I'm very positive. I have to be positive. All these things that I'm telling my clients to do, I have to do. I try to be very positive. I try to be very clear. I have strong belief in Ayurveda. I'm still studying and learning Ayurveda. I learn from my own patients. I have to be open-minded, even though I never read anything online. I only read my books. But, you still have to be open-minded, particularly to feedback from the patients. I have to be disciplined in my own life, my own practice, and in, everything. So I need these same qualities to be a good practitioner as you need this positive thinking to be a good patient. We both need to be positive. We both need to be open-minded, and we both cannot be overly sensitive. I've had that too, where people are like maybe offended or something. And, people have said things I don't like, but I keep them as a patient. So, we can't, these little mental barriers can really mess us up, make a person stop the treatment because they don't like the herbs, or maybe they didn't like one of my jokes or something like that, or they just didn't have any belief. But you can get the point. It's this thinking that's the issue here. It's not the treatment. The treatment would probably work but when your thinking is not correct, then the treatment's not going to work. And ultimately, I'll close by saying the best thinking is to have faith. I've seen it. I get a lot of, Catholics in Southern Texas, and they have a lot of faith. And I see the more religious a person has, the more they have faith, the more they believe in being greater than themselves. they believe in the creator, whatever religion it is. Those people with faith, they have more belief, they have more positive thinking. And I think that is important. That's just what I've seen, that those people with faith, which I think is even beyond positive thinking, they do the best. They do the best. So I hope this helped you. And if you're my patient, I hope you feel more confident, more clear, more focused, more open-minded, and more positive about your treatment. And please, no more complaining about the bad taste. Let's have some discipline over there and slam it down. All right. I wish you all the best of health and happiness, and I appreciate your feedback and comments there. God bless you all.